Hey, Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brittany, thanks for having me.
Yes,
Sorry.
definitely. We got connected a while ago, didn't we? You were in Austin for a little bit
Yeah, back in New York now,
in the city, right?
the city.
How the city. You're from the tri-state. You
It's
call it
it's
the city.
coming back to life slowly but surely. And if anyone follows me on social media, I'm like pro New York or nowhere lately. It's kind of obnoxious.
Wow, yeah. Well, what is FemTech like in New York City, actually? I haven't asked you that. Is it like everyone's down with the vulva, or is there still like lots of barriers?
With the vulva. Um, yeah, I have another story for another day. I would say like before COVID, there were lots of different groups and initiatives, and they're still here, but it's just hard to feel the presence because we're not going to in-person events. But I spend a lot of time in California and in New York, and I think that I probably, again, I might be biased or skewed because I spend more time in New York, but I would say that there's a heavy presence of femtech in New York.
Awesome.
And lots of players we don't even know about that are popping up, and people I talk to and founders I talk to even abroad were and are trying to make their way to New York when COVID subsides.
Yeah, we've interviewed several femtech founders from New York City, but this interview style, this podcast was born in the pandemic, so most of them were not still in the city. But anyways, good to know that New York City is coming around to talking about this stuff, because there's definitely certain countries and states that it's not as prevalent, and there's still so much work to do. So I'm glad New York City is a little bit more open.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of things that we look forward to doing and bringing the community together once we can hang out in person again. I'm an extrovert here, so I'm dying for it.
Me too. Me too. I'm essentially smothering my dogs because I need hugs.
Uh,
But
we'll
Rachel,
bring you up. We'll bring you up here.
yes, definitely. Well, Rachel, our listeners love to know a little bit more about the personal background of our guests, because most of us didn't grow up saying, I want to go into women's health and wellness. Somehow we ended up here. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about where you're from, what did you study, and then how did you end up here?
Yeah. So the part that okay, study. Wow, that word seems like a while ago. So when you have an intro, like right when you're out of college, it's like that's where you start. So I was actually finance accounting background. Ironically, I started college probably like many people do. Like I'm going to go pre-med. Like I thought I was going to be pre-med, which means like I took biology and chemistry 101, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me. So I always had an interest in the field, and was just kind of along my path meandering, thinking about what I wanted to do. And healthcare more broadly was always on my mind. Probably at least one experience that touched me it was like freshman or sophomore year of college. My grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was in her, I think, late 60s, early 70s. So it still seemed like semi-young. And I was too young to really know the depths of anything scientific anyway, what was really going on. But it obviously impacted my mom, my family, to the extent that she didn't recognize me anymore. And I'm always the type of person, at least I have been since I was a kid, curious, sometimes just pushing back, asking why too much, challenging the status quo. So I kind of got in my head like, well, what's really going on? Like they gave her all these medications. It was like, did she need all those? And I was kind of suspicious as to like, well, what if, right? What if it would have been a medication that worked better? Like, what if the too many switching of the medications actually made it get worse? What if we could have just prevented this? Like, is my mom going to get it? Am I going to get it? Like, is there things I could do in my diet and eat? And so like, I kind of became a bit of a, I hate to say the word hypochondriac, but I'll admit it. That's the truth. And so I've recovered from it today. So that influenced then like what would I do with an accounting and finance background, with that being somewhat of a innovative passion in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And started my career like in the internal auditing field. I think worked at Freddie Mac for a summer, and I was like, I really wanted to have more variety. I wanted to be in New York. That was something that I knew, just because I love New York. Obviously, we covered that. And also because, at least in New Jersey, there's a heavy presence of the biopharma and life sciences space out here. And I thought, well, maybe I could also travel around the world. So anyway, I was really keen on getting to New York to work for Deloitte, where I started my career as a consultant and meandered quickly out of what was the first like audit project, and I think like life insurance space. And I was like, I really want to be in biotech. So within 3 months, I had navigated my way around to find the people that did projects in that space. And then that set off, 6 or 7 years of my career at Deloitte, where I was working with life sciences and biotech companies. Specifically, it migrated from things like, how do you reinvent your sales and marketing practices to physicians? Some of the compliance was like the segue. And then that morphed into helping companies think about how to engage patients with new technology and the use of data. There's some buzzwords in there I'll use, like the use of real world evidence and changing up the clinical trial space with the use of biomarkers. So both on the R&D side and on the commercial, it was just coming up with new solutions. I think this is like 4 or 5 years ago. I would sit in a room with the heads of biopharma, and I would hear, and it wasn't in women's health at all at this time. Like, I focused on different areas. There wasn't many companies that were like big in women's health, maybe birth control pills. But for the most part, you'd still hear the head chief medical officers say, CEOs, that a patient is a patient is a patient. And I was like, oh, I just, fire in my soul would burn. Well, why? Like, people don't want to be sick in the first place. And why aren't companies focused on prevention? And we know part of that is just there's no money in prevention sometimes, and I challenge that. So there was things like that kept fueling my energy from the part where I started, which was this question of like, could you use data about yourself and your day-to-day relative to other people like you? And like any machine learning AI problem, could you learn what to do differently against the backdrop of a certain genetic composition, right? Like, what could I do to change my health trajectory? And I was laughing with some people at the time, because it was like, well, I just want to know how much potassium I have. And people were like, why? Like, I don't know, it's just potassium. Potassium like always was my example and what I fixated on, but like, I don't know why it was potassium. Like, I don't know if potassium really impacts us that much, but for me, potassium was the thing that's going to save my life. Okay. So I really was keen on how to use personalized health insights, how to deliver personalized health insights in the form of driving behavior change, driving prevention. And I started Jubel in 2016, left my corporate career, took a plunge. It really did feel like a plunge at the time. And I thought I had it all figured out when I left to do this. And as you know, there was one guy that's an advisor to me that was a former global CEO of one of the big pharmas. And he's like, it always takes you twice as long and twice as much money. And I'd say that's true. And for every pivot I've had, that's true. So we started Jubel again, it wasn't a buzzword when we started, but empower people to own their health. Like, you own it. We're in the age of information. So why can't, people have access to this, to know what to do, to guide, and the tools to guide them towards a better life. And with that first company, there was many markets, with the advent of Jubel, there was many markets that we were looking at, and we did start in the hardware space. I'll share more on later. What was I going to say? We were looking at different markets, from, fitness to obesity, and there was chronic conditions to acute phases, and there was women's health, which included fertility and pregnancy. And at that time I had a lot of pregnant friends. So it made sense that there was a strong need, and that's where we started.
So where is Jubel Health today?
So today, the short version of it is we are I can back up and revisit the story of how we got there, but we're currently a family planning and fertility concierge service. So think of us like your personal fertility coaching team that gives you information in the form of insights and support in the form of coaching. So we're filling people with what they don't know until they need to know it, and then they go to find it. And we're there for you, and we're trying to fill that space for anyone that's on that, I use the word fertility quest. And we're starting with that market to give people awareness and do this in a I go back to that patient, like we're targeting the person or the individual, the couple, like no matter who you are, and trying to meet you where you are to give you what you need. And it's a touch of medically vetted information. So like take the minds of all of the physicians that you'd have on that journey, whether it's an OBGYN, a reproductive endocrinologist, a nutritionist, the et cetera, fitness. So there's all of these things that come together, and we give you the information that's the best of their minds, that's tailored to you based on some data we collect, and provide you with support and coaching and also connections to health and wellness resources along your journey of forming and building a family.
And so you said you went into women's health because a lot of your friends were pregnant, but did you discover that once you started to look into fertility and family planning, there was other things that like fueled your fire? Because your friends just being pregnant, I doubt gave you enough motivation to continue this for 4 years, right? So
Yeah.
what other things that potentially you turned over a rock and you discovered and you just dove even further headfirst into FemTech? Was there experiences like that?
Are you kind of hitting on the timeline and why?
Well, I guess so. Yeah. Because for me, I thought FemTech was so exciting, right? And just on face value. But then as I dug, I would discover things about FemTech, like how, this med device was invented 50 years ago and no one's changed it. And so all of a sudden I'd go deeper and deeper and more passionate about it. So wondering for you, like at first it was like your friends are pregnant, but like as you got into it, what were other things that were motivating you to continue forward?
Yeah, I mean, the pregnancy piece for me, transparency, like I hadn't been pregnant. To this date, I haven't been pregnant. I haven't pursued fertility treatment. I come back to how that is relevant to me today, ironically. But I think that at the beginning, pregnancy, what was, back to my dorky potassium thing, what was so interesting about the space, first pregnancy too, from a personal level, was that like you're able to change up, child is in the womb, but like you're able to change up some of the decisions there, and then that could have an impact later on. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like it's not enough. I felt like at times that, okay, well, if I was pregnant, I experienced this hardship, and this is why I'm here solving that purpose for the world. That's not my story. That's not, why I started it. And I have a lot of, like, I'm on the outskirts of this big picture looking in at a problem that I'm compelled to solve, because there's so many, it's not just pregnancy, but like the broader, from preconception, fertility planning, all the way through pregnancy and beyond, and the impact that has on a woman, on a child, on a family, the broader economy, et cetera. So I think my reason for starting, as I said, it didn't even have anything to do with women's health until that became like the center of focus, is a good place to like really hack into giving insights to drive change, and providing that like empowering support and information. So while it started with, it started with one reason, and like I said, it's morphed along the way, and from hardware to pregnancy software to now fertility. We still have there's a thread of commonality between it, but we've had lots of pivots. And so I think my personal affiliation. So when we went from pregnancy, let me just like maybe back up and tell you a little bit more about those pieces I just mentioned. So on the hardware side, that was maternal sensing, fetal sensing, and like infant sensing, like wearable technology that was designed just for women. And I had realized at the time that like hardware, just given the biotech background and medical device world, like it's a long shot, and it's hard, and it takes a lot of resources just to get a prototype off the ground. I was like, we're going to sense everything. We're going to put it in this package. It's going to be great. And then, first time founder trying to raise like $5 million with nothing to show for it, just to go build something I could show. It was just a hard sell. And maybe I gave up on that too quickly, but what I learned was like, wait, hold on. Why I started was I wanted to deliver the insights, and I didn't have the software to deliver the insights. So I kind of like, okay, we'll pause on the hardware, and then we'll go build this app out that delivers this insights in a really cool, engaging, consumer-oriented experience, but has the grounds of medical credibility to be sticky, like those two together. So then we're out there doing, observational studies with several physicians in Los Angeles in the maternal fetal medicine space. And it happened to be as they were using the app that we had built, which was really cool. the people that most needed it and the highest demand was from those that were coming from an IVF journey. And they were like, wow, I really wish that this would have been there for me sooner. I would have, despite having like concierge care in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, and texting their doctors 24/7, they still said that just something else. It was just like, you want everything to go well. You want everything to go right. So they're like, this kind of, it's a chatbot based like technology on the technology side. So part of the feature is that you can just text anything you want and we give you an answer that's for you, that be like you texting your doctor that question. So there was the need there. So then here I am at this point in my journey, and we had some changes in our technology team. Didn't really have enough resources to push out this was going to be like a consumer app for pregnancy. And we were like, we don't really have the resources to do that. So we're still shopping around, like fundraising, and still trying to like get users on. But and I followed the lead for fertility to just at that point thinking like, okay, we'll just add that on. It'll be easy. So then I go talking to these fertility doctors that I get connected to all on the West Coast. And I was doing my research like any good consultant would do. And I was like, tell me about the demographic of people that walk into your fertility clinic. And one of the physicians on the West Coast, I did not know enough about the space. It's really complex. There's just so many moving parts to it. And so I said, tell me about these people that come in. And she says, well, they're 30. I was 30. They want to know if they've just gone through a breakup, and I had. They want to know, and they want to know if they should freeze their eggs. My mouth was like, huh? What? And she was like, oh, she goes, oh, is that you? And I was like, no. I'm like, okay, sorry. What were you saying about your CFO? She was like, but all of a sudden in my mind, I'm like, freezing eggs. Like, I mean, you'd heard that, but I didn't really like think about it.
Yeah.
So there I'm in the space, and it still was like a 10th degree of separation from me. I was like, egg freezing, like, what is that? Like, I didn't think I was gonna actually pursue that, but it was still like in the back of my mind then of like, what that meant. And that day, actually, she sold me. I ended up like going through the whole fertility testing path in the spirit of market research, right? So at the time, someone on my team calls me. She's like, "What are you doing? You have this investor meeting," and she like hears the nurse in the background, like calling my name in. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I gotta go. It's really important." So anyway, I won't forget that day. But it was for me, this space of there's those that struggle to conceive. I don't hope to be there. I think that what I share is hopes and dreams for having a family someday. Thinking about the decisions that I make in my life and wanting a plan, because I'm a woman of childbearing age. I'm more than knee deep into this startup that I love and I want to succeed. And so there's that for me now, which is now I share these hopes and dreams. I think so many people have plans and expectations, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so, that's why I say, like, I mean it when I say whoever you are and wherever you are in the journey, like there's a way to reframe the thinking about it. There's support that people need to go through that journey. And so my bringing it all the way like full circle is that I didn't start for this, but I now have more of a purposeful conviction behind it, because whether it's egg freezing or preservation, it's just feeling like you have the empowerment, meaning like you have the information, you have a plan, and plans don't always work out, but you've got support in that journey. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Totally. And I love the story because, I'm a 29-year-old single woman. And, as I've gotten into FemTech and I'm listening to panels about egg freezing and they're describing the ideal woman who's usually going in and doing this, I'm like, damn, that's me.
Yeah. No, I was at a fertility clinic. I was so excited because I hadn't been like I love to be on the ground, like going into the clinics and just like meeting with the physicians. And so I was talking to one of them, and like the nurse came up and she says, oh, hold on, I need to give some notes. And she says, well, 36, just broke up with boyfriend, wants to freeze her eggs. And I was like, there we go again. I was like, is this a thing? Like, I mean, that's the 3 bullet points of notes. I was like, so, everyone's out there. If you're I guess if you've gone through a breakup, Instagram and Facebook know, and you'll be seeing egg
They
freezing
know
ads.
it. Yes, they know it. They know it. I've been definitely getting those advertisements. And, you know, I think the first time I really started to consider my like fertility clock was when I turned 27, I think was the birthday. And it was the first birthday that I just kind of sat back and was like, huh, okay, like I'm single, like what am I doing? And I didn't get anxious about it, but it was the first time that that thought started to grow. And I wonder over the decades, like how later that number is. Like I wonder if women started to have that thought at like 21, you know, and now it's a 27-year-old thought.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also due to the hype that's created in the media. And part of it's necessary because age is the biggest predictor of success, right? And I mean, part of our thing is, well, 7 million women in the US struggle to conceive, and 20% of those could benefit from assisted reproductive, I'm going to say treatment. I may be like misspeaking on if it's treatment versus technology, but there's 1 to 3% that pursue it, and that could be testing, you know, to in the form of preconception. I'm not saying it always has to be IVF, but there's a gap because like 17 to 19% of people like could benefit from it. And then you stack that up against the fact that age is the biggest predictor of success. So it would make sense that 50% of the problem, one, is access, and the other is earlier awareness. And so again, it's not like freezing your eggs, for example, is some people would call it an insurance policy. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as like, it's just a little bit of an added level of, it's an added level of comfort to you. It doesn't, and I say that because it doesn't mean you're going to draw love into your life any faster if that's the thing you're looking for to do it. You know, it doesn't mean you're going to find that partner any faster. So you're still like muddling along, going through your life. And even if you freeze your eggs, like it still may not happen. Like it's so, anyway, I think part of it is this imperative of building awareness out, to your point, makes the 27, the 21-year-old like, what, egg freezing? Like this is a thing. And I think it's a cool thing. I think it's about empowering. It's not just this whole field of fertility. We're not just thinking of women, but yeah, for women, like it is some form of one more thing to empower you and to like get in front of it and think about it. And it draws up a lot of questions as you look at your life and like your plan and what you're doing. And anyway, I could go off on this. We talked about this before. So.
Yeah. I know there's so much to talk about in terms of like societal pressure, and is that still a thing anymore? Like, can you just say screw it? You know, you don't have to have kids. You don't have to, right? But
so yeah, I mean, there was I forgot what I was watching the other day. One of the founders of, I think, one dating app, she said, other people say this, but I just heard it on like a YouTube video. And she says, well, if I would have focused on family sooner, like maybe it would have happened. If I'd have known to focus on family instead of my career. Like, and so I stepped back and I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to drop what I'm doing and go focus. It's like a project, got a project plan, go find husband and go, yeah, like just, you're going to like check the box and it's done. It's like, I get the sentiment, right? That if you're, to some extent you have to make time. I'm sure you, like me, we work a lot and I enjoy working. So yeah, you make time to focus on family or meeting someone wherever you are in that journey. But again, it's still a bit of luck, right? Like it's still a bit of, it's not like if you drop your career that all these things are just going to fall into place. Yeah, that if you would have done that in hindsight, it would have made the difference. So yes, societal pressures, that's a whole other podcast in itself, right?
We could talk about it all. Let's talk about one other part of that you talked about is accessibility, right? So how much, do you know, like how much on average egg freezing costs?
I think, I don't know like off the top of my head, like all the storage related costs to it, but you're looking between like 8,000 and 12,000, and it depends. I mean, it could be like 15 even. So I know that's like a broad range.
And there's like, and I'm asking you, you're closer to this field than I am, so feel free to say that you don't know the answer, but like, there's no like coverage for that, right? It's like out of pocket.
For the most part, yeah, there may be some or egg freezing for that reason. Yeah, I mean, some employers may have offerings that are unique to that. Yeah, but from an insurance standpoint, I mean, the whole access issue in terms of, you know, the inequities that exist across the board. I mean, for IVF especially, and thinking about, there's just splotchy insurance. Some states cover this, some states cover that. Where do you draw the line? What is infertility a disease? Like, should it be covered? And I think it's like one thing to say, well, go back to the example of a woman who waited later in life to have children because she focused on her career. Like, well, should that be covered, right? Like, is that like a Medicaid thing? Or what about if you have PCOS or endometriosis? Like, where do you start drawing the lines? And people that walk into a clinic because they want a boy instead of a girl. Like, I think that there's a lot of, so, but then the egg freezing thing too. I mean, and so I think it's a whole controversial topic. And, you know, I think there needs to be an increase in access. I think that there shouldn't be so many inequities for people that do want to have a family. And, you know, sometimes people they don't want to be in a situation. They didn't plan for it, and that there should be options there.
Yeah, it's insane to me to think about like people who want to have a family and the idea of IVF being so expensive, freezing being so expensive, adoption being so expensive.
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
if people are loving, if they're solid people, there's plenty of babies that could use their love likely, right?
I know. And then that's a whole other, thing too.
Well, I know you are launching a newer version. And by the way, listeners, if you are, you know, saying, wait, she started this in 2016 and Brittany's talking about launching. If you ever started a startup, you know what's up. There are pivots, there are changes, you get data, you learn, you change. And so if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, get ready to have a product launch that looks nothing like your original idea. So just to put all that out there. So Rachel, you are, you know, launching some new version. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And, you know, I know that COVID-19 has affected that a little bit, the timeline and stuff. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we've launched a few times before. I mean, but like before COVID, we were so far successful in clinics. The fertility clinics were interested in licensing Jubel's technology as an extended concierge service. You know, we catch people, we're like, you know, you're walking out of the doctor's office, you're overwhelmed with information, and it's like, hey, doctor's still here for you to text you 24/7, but like try asking Jubel. And that's the technology piece of it. And I think so what we learned anyway was that the spirit of this is to build trust with people, and to do that, people, you know, when you're paying for a product, it's about you and like you benefit. So whether it's from marketing or just for like the actual business model, for us, I believe that the patient, you know, paying signals to us like we are all about you. And so all paths led to direct to consumer anyway pre-COVID, and we were already like shifting that direction. We still have an offering that we offer to clinics. Like if you're in a fertility clinic and you're going through that, we have a tool that will guide you through. But on the consumer front, the idea was that, you know, whether you go into your OBGYN and maybe you're having, depending on the level of depth there, a conversation around preconception counseling. Like, how do I get pregnant? I want to get off my birth control. Like those kinds of conversations, your OBGYN could say, oh, great. Like, I'm here for you. I'd love to have this conversation, but they're in primary care. They don't have that much time. So like, here's Jubel and this team of people to like help you kind of get that conversation started. And there's Google, right? You may turn to Google and say, yeah, like, how do I get pregnant? Or should I get off my birth control? Or how do I know if I'm ovulating?
And so all your Facebook ads change too.
Yeah. But like, you could hear about Jubel from that sense. And then, you know, we have a lot of people that go through these experiences and they just love to share their journey. Like, it's all over social media. So heavy component there. And so point is, like, that's how you'd hear about us, you know, from the OBGYN channels, maybe your REI if you are going, but if you're not, your traditional ways that you hear about everything else these days in the consumer world. So the other thing that shifted is, so during COVID, you know, we immediately, because we had paused some of our pregnancy efforts, just to focus, that fertility was a whole can of worms in terms of building that out. So many different people to build something so personalized. You have so many different people in different walks of their journey and different circumstances. And so to really cater to that need, it was challenging for us. And so pregnancy is coming right back in. So we'll cover like the full gamut. But on the fertility side, it's more than just an app. And we had this great team of reproductive endocrinologists. We've got like 5, and there's some of, like, I have people always ask, like, how'd you get these guys like sign up for this? Like, they're a really great team. Like, if I was gonna, and we picked them based off of their commitment to like this patient first, patient education mindset, and they're innovative as well. And so that always helps. And so we've got 5 of those. We've got nutrition and fitness and OBGYNs, maternal fetal medicine specialists. So we have these people on board, and they helped build this app. But then COVID hit, and we're like, hey, we're not ready to launch, but like, we were like, what can we do? Like, we had all these pregnancy questions coming into us. So we just started doing a series of webinars, just taking our, taking an OBGYN and an REI, and like, let's talk, like, there's gaps between the mindsets of the two. So like, let's just hack that. Let's put it out there. We did a bunch of webinars. So we started our direct to consumer launching efforts. So now what's launching is, the questions around how to get pregnant, what fertility treatment entails, or where do you start? What do I need to know? Or maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're looking for donor or surrogacy help. Like, again, PCOS, endometriosis, there's all these different paths. So no matter where you'd hear about us, you can download our app, which we'll be releasing soon in the next month. And we'll share more information about that through you, Brittany, if you'd like. But you can sign up. We collect details about where you are in your journey. And that's used to give you immediately like tailored resources. We connect you as well to our fertility coach. We have several coaches that are, some of them actually gone through journeys themselves in fertility treatment. And they've 30 plus years of nurse experience, nurse practitioner experience in this space, and know the landscape of the industry. It's really complex. And so they'll assess where you are and immediately try to figure out how we can help you, and point you to resources, of course, but like, really, what's that next best step for you? Is it to go to an OBGYN? Is it to freeze eggs? Is it an REI? Do you want to talk to a genetic counselor? Are you interested in understanding like the legal ramifications of surrogacy? Is it genetic counseling advice? So there's this whole ecosystem, and our goal is to bring that under one roof for you. And there's other things that are really cool, like perks and discounts that come through to help somewhat. Yeah. Hopefully with the access piece of this, but we're not targeting that directly. So, and there's things like fertility yoga, like we pull in people that are like each other. So let's say there's like 5 of you that are going through PCOS, like you can all join together and go talk to the nutritionist together, and some of our interactive classes, you can do a yoga class together. So it's kind of like, in a sense, I was joking about like, it's like Peloton or like going to school, like it's a series of support and infrastructure and resources and courses and one-on-one coaching with all of our professionals as well that you get.
Man, I absolutely love the webinar piece and the community piece, because we see this a lot in FemTech, that the most successful FemTech companies also do a lot of education and community building for their users. If you are just selling a product to women, you're likely not going to catch on unless you also do some kind of education, community forums, very authentic. Usually the founders are honest. Here you are in an interview, international podcast, talking about freezing your eggs. So obviously you're right in the lane with being an authentic founder, leader, right? So I'm really excited for you, because the data is based on my observation of other FemTech companies. You're on track for what makes it successful. Can I ask you, and you may not know, you are not the expert, you are the founder, the visionary, right? You bring in other experts, but can we talk about surrogacy for a second here? Like, how popular is surrogacy? And for our listeners, can you quickly define what surrogacy is?
So define it. I would define it as, a woman conceiving a pregnancy on behalf of another couple. Yeah, no matter who that couple is. And I think for New York anyway, it's exciting because now paid surrogacy is legal. And I was having a conversation yesterday with, it's like anyone in fertility like finds their way somehow through my network into having a conversation with them. But she had, there's law firms just built out just to help with the contractual, phases of obtaining a surrogate and all the things that a surrogate's supposed to do and go through. And, the changes you're going through in your body, like, so like what you eat and, are you going to get vaccinated for COVID, for the flu? Like if you're carrying someone else's child, like all those things come to bear. And are you using, the use of donor plus surrogacy is the whole thing. So it's for us, like, I think that journey alone, it involves a next level of hand holding that we want to really like tailor to. So for example, like if you came in through our coach, you know, if she'd understand that need within 15 minutes, and then we connect you to a couple of things. We connect you to a surrogacy coach that like is an expert in that space. Again, I haven't gone through it, so like it's not necessarily like me, but like that involves like some unique hand holding. And I think it is, you know, becoming more and more popular, especially like with LGBT community, right? So I there's not many states that I believe are you know, that paid surrogacy is allowed. I think we'll see changes in that going forward.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we should post some articles about that. I didn't realize it was a state by state thing that you could or could not do it. So that's interesting. Well, thanks for diving into that for a second. I know I have questions, but I was like,
lucky for you, I was having detailed conversations about it yesterday. So
well, Rachel, this has been really awesome. I want to ask you two last questions that our listeners really love. The first one is, we have a lot of aspiring FemTech founders listening to this podcast, and they want to know, what are areas in women's health and wellness that still need innovating? So what do you think still needs working on?
So much. So much that like you also have, I think about it with like, was there a real business there? I'm biased because I spend now like all of my world in either fertility or pregnancy. So I see two areas, and they're two that we're like, they're behind our mission, right? It's really like how you could execute it. And so I said access. I mean, we need endless numbers of people like going after the access, because there's bloating in the cost for fertility treatments. And at the risk of anyone being annoyed for me saying this, like it exists because of, you know, the spike in prices for medications, the generics alternatives, or some of the hormonal therapies. And then on the services side too, there's some heavy profit margins built in there. And so it's just like, could you squeeze some of that out? Is there unique ways? And I think, as with any industry in healthcare, you see them transform over time, and you start to see things normalize. Like, and normalize meaning like the standard of care is there. Like for pregnancy, like the standard of care is established, where it's less established in fertility. So I'm hoping that changes. But you know, you have insurance benefits now, like the Projects of the world that sell to you know, employers. So there's some strides being there. I mean, they IPO'd, so like you do see progress and investment going into it. But I think we need more. It is something that's front of mind for us. And again, so I'm biased, so this is like my window. And I think the second piece that's different but related, at least especially, you know, on the pregnancy front of what we're doing, that the U.S. is the worst maternal mortality rate in the developed world. Now, I believe that's also a function of the fact that the U.S. healthcare system is in need of repair.
Yes, that's a nice way of saying it. Yep.
Yeah, in need of repair. You know, it's the 21st century though. Like, why is that happening? And you know, there's not, people haven't, I mean, pregnant women aren't included in clinical trials. I think women haven't really been included in clinical trials until more recently. Yeah. So I don't know, you look at that and you're like, there must be solutions that can cut. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are looking at that maternal mortality, you know, factor. And for us, it's like, if we could change up the epigenetics of mom, I think I've told you this when we talked, genetic background, mom and dad, you know, just for that example, before they have a child, could you reduce preterm labor? Could you offset preeclampsia or gestational diabetes in some way, and then therefore preterm labor, and then therefore maternal mortality? Like there's other ways and baby steps to go at it. And I think that once you get in, you're like, well, I'm going to reduce maternal mortality, but like there's so much that has to happen.
Yeah.
To demonstrate that data, right?
Like when someone says they're going to cure cancer, it's like, okay, actually every type.
Right, let's break this down.
Disease, yeah.
What kind of cancer? What causes it? Do we even know the causes of these things? No, because we don't have the data. And
that's another common thread in FemTech, is that like, we know this is an issue, but we have no data. No one's actually looked, you know, and we need money to research it. And yeah.
And that's why we should know what our baseline potassium is all the time.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure if you're serious or not.
I'm dead serious. Anyway.
last question is, what do you think the FemTech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
I mean, it's fairly obvious. Investment dollars. It always starts
Yeah.
with investment dollars. No, but really, there's real problems here. When I was starting out, I didn't know how to raise money. That was a whole exercise in itself, just learning. You know, people are like, what's your valuation? I'm like, what's the valuation? I was like, the first month, it's fine. But I would go to meetings, which I'll admit, like it's more male dominated investment community, right? And these guys would be like scratching their heads, like, I don't understand what problem you're solving. People have been having babies for years. What?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, there's some real problems, and I think it's amazing to see. Like, you know, I just use Portfolio as an example, right there. But there's funds that are just focused on investing in females or women's health, and like we need more of those. Like, I think there's at least in my LinkedIn, there's a bunch of buzz around it, but I don't think it's enough. And I don't. And the other thing to distinguish is, you know, when you have funds that their thesis is, well, we focus on female founders. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because a lot of female founders happen to be thinking about solutions that benefit themselves, whether it's in women's health or sexual health or reproductive health. So, but investing in women that happen, or females, and that happen to be more so coming up with solutions in FemTech is not just about benefiting women. It's that these women, per se, they're making better families and the economy, that like it's a full circle, right? That contributes into like the whole world. And I was also inspired because one of my best friend's sisters, she's a mom of 2 boys, and I forgot the exact, like, it was like one of those Instagram memes, but it said like mom saying like, this is hard, and then people or someone else says, oh, but you're doing so great, you got this. And she's like, no, like, and then it's like a cut off of whatever she says, which is, no, but I'm drowning, like, help me. And then like people say, no, you got this. I'm just so impressed with you and what you're doing. And so she's still like, no, you're not hearing me. Like, we need help. And especially think during COVID, right? Like all of the moms that are at home, like trying to work and do careers like we're doing, and they have children that are like popping up in Zoom in the background, which is really cute. But it's just, it's a lot today. And I think there's so many overlooked areas. There's so many, there's vast amounts of opportunity in the space of women's health, reproductive health, but just things that haven't just been looked at before. And so I think investment dollars do make a difference. If you can't get investment as a female founder, because most of the community let's just be honest, we all invest in or tend to want to participate in or be involved with initiatives that we understand or we're passionate about. And so I get it. Like, you're not having a baby sometimes. And that's not true for everyone, because I've met many, many men that are like, oh, I get this. Like my daughter, my wife, right? Someone like has gone through it. But yeah, I'd say investment dollars. And for me, that's what I'd be doing next.
I freaking love it. And that is why FemTech Focus is,
this is great.
Really pulling together our resources to start our own fund, because we're always preaching, like, if you improve women's health, you improve everyone's health. We don't just birth ladies, right? So if you improve a woman's sexual wellness, you're improving the sexual wellness of her partner, right? Like, you are improving.
Exactly. It's making healthier humans that are happy people, and like we need that.
Yes.
So I love what you're doing. This is a great podcast series, and I'm all with you to support you on the fun. Let's talk.
Awesome. Yes, I'm gonna come up to the city and we're gonna hang out.
Texas has cities too. It's fine.
Rachel, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.